The laughter wasn't loud, but it cut deep. It came in small pieces. Whispers near the elevators, smirks behind coffee cups, eyes that slid past her as if she didn't exist. Every morning before most employees arrived, the poor cleaner pushed her cart through the shining halls, quietly doing the work no one noticed. Her uniform was worn but clean, her movements careful and steady. To many, she was just part of the background. To some, she was an easy target. They mocked her without thinking twice. A spilled joke about her accent, comment about her shoes, a passing remark that she should smile more while scrubbing the floor. None of them knew her name. None of them asked. It was easier to assume her story was small, simple, and unimportant. After all, in a building filled with ambition and titles, who paid attention to the cleaner? But she noticed everything. She noticed who held doors open and who didn't. She noticed who spoke kindly to interns and who barked orders at anyone they thought was beneath them. She noticed the fear in people's voices when deadlines loomed, the pride when deals closed, and the loneliness hidden behind expensive suits. As she wiped fingerprints from glass walls and emptied trash bins, she listened. Not to gossip, but to people. And every night, when the lights dimmed and the office grew quiet, she left without a sound, carrying secrets no one suspected she knew. Most employees believed success only wore one face. They believed power came with a badge, a corner office, or a name engraved on a door. They never imagined it could walk past them holding a mop. One afternoon everything shifted. The company buzzed with tension. Rumors spread fast. An unexpected visit, an important announcement, a meeting no one had prepared for. The CEO was coming in person. For some, it meant opportunity. For others, fear. Desks were cleaned, jackets straightened, smiles practiced. Everyone wanted to be seen. No one noticed the cleaner standing near the conference room doors. She was there as always, calm and quiet, her cart parked neatly against the wall. A group of employees passed by, their voices sharp with stress. One of them glanced at her and laughed under his breath, making a cruel comment meant to impress the others. She didn't react. She simply lowered her eyes and continued wiping the glass. Then the doors opened. Silence spread through the hallway as the CEO stepped out. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones slipped into pockets. People stood straighter, suddenly aware of themselves. The CEO's gaze moved across the crowd slowly, deliberately, as if searching for something or someone. And then, to everyone's shock, the CEO didn't walk toward the executives. Instead, they walked toward the cleaner. The room held its breath. The woman looked up, meeting the CEO's eyes for the first time. There was no fear there, no surprise, only recognition. And as the CEO smiled and spoke her name, clearly, confidently, the truth began to surface, and every laugh from before suddenly felt dangerously misplaced. The sound of her name echoed softly through the hallway, but it landed like thunder. People exchanged confused looks, unsure if they had heard correctly. Some leaned forward, others froze in place. The poor cleaner straightened her back, slowly resting her hands on the handle of her cart. For the first time, the way she stood didn't match the role everyone had assigned her. There was a quiet confidence there, something steady and unshaken. The CEO spoke again, this time in a warmer tone, one filled with familiarity. A few employees shifted uncomfortably. They had never seen the CEO speak to anyone without authority like that. Certainly not to someone they had ignored for months. The cleaner nodded politely, her expression calm, as if this moment had been expected all along. Whispers spread quickly. Who was she? Why did the CEO know her name? Was this some kind of mistake? What no one knew was that long before she wore that uniform, she had walked into this building through the front doors, not the service entrance. Years ago, she had been part of something bigger, something that never made it onto company newsletters or award plaques. She had seen the company at its most fragile stage, when ideas were raw and risks were high. Back then, she had learned how easily people underestimated quiet voices. Life had taken her down a different path after that. Responsibilities had piled up. Choices had been made out of necessity, not comfort. She didn't complain. She adapted. When she took the cleaning job, she told herself it was temporary. A way to stay close. A way to observe. A way to understand what the company had become when she was no longer visible. As the months passed, she noticed cracks beneath the polished surface. Small abuses of power. Casual cruelty masked as humor. People who treated others based on job titles, not character. Every mocking comment, every dismissive glance added to a silent record she kept in her mind. She never defended herself. She didn't need to. She was learning. The CEO's visit wasn't random. Behind closed doors, concerns had been growing about the company culture. Productivity was up, but trust was down. Complaints had been vague, anonymous, and hard to trace. Someone inside had been providing insight that no report could capture. Someone who saw everything without being seen. Cleaner. As the CEO stood beside her now, the tension thickened. Managers forced smiles. A few employees suddenly looked ashamed, replaying their own words in their heads. The jokes that once felt harmless now sounded dangerous. The cleaner's eyes moved across the group, not with anger, but with clarity. She wasn't there to accuse anyone, at least not yet. The CEO turned toward the crowd, hands clasped behind their back, preparing to speak. Whatever was about to be said felt heavy, like it could change everything. Careers, reputations, futures. All seemed to hang in the balance. The cleaner stepped slightly closer to the CEO. Her presence no longer invisible. The room waited, hearts pounding, as the truth hovered just out of reach. And as the CEO took a breath, ready to explain who she really was and why she had been there all along, one question echoed silently in every mind. If they had known the truth from the beginning, would they have treated her the same way? The CEO didn't speak right away. That pause stretched longer than anyone expected, long enough for the hum of the air conditioner to feel loud. Shifted. Hands tightened around folders and phones. The cleaner remained still, her face unreadable, as if she had learned long ago how to wait without showing fear. That silence became its own kind of pressure, forcing everyone to sit with their thoughts. From the back of the group, a junior employee watched closely. She had been one of the few who greeted the cleaner every morning. Nothing special, just a nod, sometimes a quiet thank you. Now she wondered if those small moments mattered more than she had realized. Nearby, a department manager felt a knot form in his stomach. He remembered laughing along when someone made a joke at the cleaner's expense. He told himself it was harmless then. It didn't feel harmless now. The CEO finally began to speak, not revealing anything yet, but asking questions instead. Simple ones. How was morale? Did people feel respected at work? The answers came quickly, rehearsed and polished, the kind given when authority is watching. But the cleaner's presence changed the weight of every word. It was hard to talk about respect when the person most often ignored was standing right there. As the conversation continued, small stories surfaced. A missed promotion blamed on office politics. An intern who quit without explanation. A team that stopped sharing ideas because no one listened. None of it sounded dramatic on its own, but together, it painted a troubling picture of a company losing its sense of fairness. The cleaner listened closely, her eyes lowering at times, lifting at others, as if matching each story to something she had already seen. In the weeks before this moment, she had noticed patterns others missed. How certain voices dominated meetings. How credit traveled upward, never sideways or down. How kindness disappeared when pressure rose. She had written none of it down. She didn't need to. Every detail lived clearly in her memory. Across the room, one executive studied her face, searching for signs of judgment. He had always believed that power protected people like him. Now he wasn't so sure. If the CEO trusted this woman enough to stand beside her, what else did she know? And who else might be listening? The cleaner shifted her weight slightly, the wheels of her cart squeaking against the floor. That small sound drew attention, reminding everyone again that she was still there, still watching. She thought about the days she wanted to speak up but chose silence instead. Not because she was weak but because timing mattered. Truth, she believed, was more powerful when it arrived at the right moment. The CEO glanced at her, just briefly, as if checking in. She gave a small nod. Whatever this was, it wasn't finished. Outside the conference room, emails went unanswered. Meetings were delayed. Word spread through the building that something unusual was happening. People sensed that this wasn't just about one cleaner or one moment. It felt bigger, like a test of character the company hadn't prepared for. And as the CEO continued asking questions, peeling back layers slowly, the tension grew sharper. Because everyone understood now that the cleaner's story wasn't just about who she was, but about who they had been when they thought no one important was watching. The air in the room felt heavier with every passing second. The CEO stopped asking questions and let the silence return, this time more deliberate than before. It was the kind of quiet that made people shift in their seats and replay their choices in their minds. The cleaner stood beside her cart, hands folded, her eyes steady. She looked less like someone waiting for instructions and more like someone holding a truth that could change everything. One by one, the employees began to realize this moment was not about performance charts or quarterly results. It was about character. About how people behaved when no cameras were on and no rewards were promised. The poor cleaner had seen those moments clearly. She had walked the halls when voices dropped and masks slipped. She had been invisible enough to hear honesty and cruelty in its rawest form. A senior manager cleared his throat as if to speak, then stopped. His confidence, once effortless, now felt fragile. He remembered snapping at the cleaner for mopping near his office, telling her to come back later, as if her time mattered less than his. The memory burned. Around him, others had their own versions of that regret. Small moments they never expected to matter. The CEO turned toward the cleaner again, this time facing her fully. Their expression wasn't stern. It was searching. The cleaner met their gaze without hesitation. Whatever story connected them ran deeper than this building, deeper than job titles. It showed in the way they understood each other without words. Outside the glass walls, employees gathered, pretending to work while straining to listen. Messages flew quietly between desks. No one knew exactly what was happening, only that something important was unfolding. The company, so proud of its image, suddenly felt exposed. The cleaner took a slow breath. For a brief moment, her guard slipped, revealing the weight she had carried for so long. Not anger but disappointment. She had believed in this place once. She had believed in what it could be. Watching it drift away from those values had been harder than any mocking comment or careless joke. The CEO raised a hand slightly, signaling that something more was coming. Their voice, when they spoke again, carried a different tone, one that suggested a line was about to be crossed, a truth about to surface. The room leaned in, hearts pounding, sensing the shift. The cleaner moved her cart a few inches forward, the soft roll echoing louder than expected. It felt symbolic, like a step toward the center of a stage she never asked for. Eyes followed her. Some were fearful. Some were curious. A few were filled with hope. The CEO's next words hung just beyond reach, and the tension peaked. Everyone knew that once the truth was spoken, there would be no going back. Reputations would change. Roles would be questioned. The simple story of a poor cleaner and a powerful company was about to become something far more uncomfortable. And as the CEO paused one last time, drawing a breath before revealing why she was truly there, the entire room braced itself. Because whatever came next would force everyone to face a reality they had worked hard to ignore. The CEO finally spoke, but instead of explaining who the cleaner was, they did something no one expected. They asked security to lock the conference room doors. Not aggressively, not with alarm, just calmly. The soft click echoed through the room, and the tension spiked instantly. This was no longer a routine visit. This was something serious. A murmur spread. Faces tightened. A few people glanced toward the exits, then back at the CEO. The cleaner didn't flinch. She had known this moment was coming. Whatever was about to unfold required privacy and courage. The CEO reached into a folder and placed it on the table without opening it. "Before anything is revealed," they said evenly, "there's something everyone here needs to understand." Their eyes moved slowly across the room. "This company is under review. Not for profits, not for growth, but for how power has been used inside these walls." That single sentence changed everything. The room stiffened. A senior executive's jaw clenched. A department head swallowed hard. No one had expected this to go beyond an uncomfortable lesson. The cleaner's presence suddenly made sense in a new, unsettling way. She wasn't just a witness. She was part of something much bigger. The CEO turned slightly toward her. "For months," they continued, "someone has been providing first-hand insight into the daily reality of this workplace. Not reports, not surveys. Real behavior." The cleaner's eyes lowered briefly, not in shame but in focus. She remembered the long nights, the careful listening, the choice to stay silent when it would have been easier to quit. One manager stood abruptly, trying to speak, but the CEO raised a hand. "Not yet." Outside the room, phones stopped buzzing. Inside, the air felt tight. People began replaying every interaction, wondering which moments had been seen, which words overheard. Jokes, the dismissals, the quiet acts of disrespect that felt invisible at the time. Then came the second shock. The CEO revealed that the board of directors was watching the meeting live from another location. Not just listening but observing reactions. The way people shifted. Who avoided eye contact. Who looked at the cleaner now with regret instead of mockery. That was when fear truly set in. The cleaner finally lifted her head. Her voice hadn't been heard yet, but her presence spoke louder than any accusation. She looked at the faces before her. Some familiar, some distant. She saw the ones who had been kind. She also saw the ones who had laughed. What no one knew was that this wasn't even the full story. Weeks earlier, the cleaner had discovered something by accident. Documents left on a printer, conversations whispered too carelessly. Nothing illegal but deeply unethical. Favoritism. Silenced complaints. Careers quietly stalled because certain people didn't fit the image. She hadn't shared all of it yet. Not even with the CEO. The CEO glanced at her again, as if sensing there was more. Their trust in her was clear, but so was the weight of what remained unspoken. The cleaner's hands tightened slightly at her sides. This had gone further than planned. What she knew could protect the company, or tear it open. And as the CEO reached for the folder on the table, preparing to reveal the next layer of truth, everyone in the room realized this was no longer just about how they treated a poor cleaner. It was about what would happen when the wrong people discovered she was never powerless at all. The CEO opened the folder at last. Inside were printed timelines, handwritten notes, and transcripts of internal complaints that had never reached HR. The room seemed to shrink as the CEO spoke, calmly connecting dots that many had hoped would never align. Names were mentioned, not accused but referenced. Patterns were explained. Promotions delayed without reason. Voices ignored because they didn't fit the image of leadership. The main conflict, once hidden behind polished smiles, now stood fully exposed. Then the CEO turned to the cleaner. "This started because of her," they said plainly. "Not because she complained, but because she observed. Because she chose to understand instead of react." The cleaner finally spoke. Her voice was steady, soft, but it carried. She explained how she had taken the job after stepping away from a senior advisory role years earlier, following a personal loss that changed her priorities. She had helped build early company values from the ground up, then watched from the shadows as those values slowly eroded. Becoming a cleaner was never about testing people. It was about seeing the truth when titles disappeared. As she spoke, tension gave way to something heavier, realization. The CEO announced immediate changes. Independent reviews. Leadership restructuring. Accountability tied not just to results but to conduct. The board confirmed it in real time. Some executives were relieved. Others looked hollow, already understanding the consequences. The main conflict had reached its peak, And for the first time it felt resolved, not with anger but with clarity. Apologies followed. Awkward, imperfect but sincere. The cleaner listened without triumph. She didn't need it. What mattered was that the truth had finally been heard. Then, just as the room began to breathe again, the final twist arrived. The CEO revealed they were stepping down. Gasps rippled through the room. Not because of failure but because leadership renewal mattered. The CEO explained that the cleaner, whose insight, integrity and courage had guided this reckoning, had been offered a choice weeks ago. Return to a visible role. Or shape the future quietly from behind the scenes. The cleaner had chosen the second. She wouldn't be taking a title. She wouldn't be stepping into the spotlight. Instead, she would lead a new internal ethics council with full independence, reporting directly to the board. Invisible no longer, but never seeking attention. The room understood then. Power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it listened, learned, and waited. As the meeting ended and the doors unlocked, people stepped back into the hallway changed. Some careers would recover, some wouldn't. But everyone had been forced to see what they once ignored. The cleaner picked up her cart one last time, not to clean floors but to move forward. As she walked away, someone thanked her. Then another. She nodded, accepting it quietly. And just before she turned the corner, she paused, glancing back at the building that once mocked her. Not with bitterness, but with resolve. Because the biggest surprise of all wasn't who she was. It was what happens when the underestimated are finally heard, and choose not revenge but change. In the days that followed, the company felt different. The halls were just as bright, the offices just as busy, but something invisible had shifted. People spoke more carefully, not out of fear but out of awareness. The story of the poor cleaner spread quickly, not as gossip, but as a quiet reminder of what had been overlooked for far too long. Employees who once walked past without noticing now made eye contact, offered greetings, and treated every role with a little more respect. The cleaner, no longer wearing the uniform, returned briefly to say her goodbyes. She didn't give speeches or accept praise. She simply thanked those who had shown kindness when it mattered least, because those were the moments that revealed true character. To the junior employee who had always nodded hello, she offered a warm smile and a handshake that said more than words ever could. The leadership changes took effect smoothly. Some managers stepped down. Others chose to learn and grow. New policies were put in place, but more importantly, conversations began. People started asking questions they had avoided before. Who gets heard in meetings? Who gets credit? Who is being quietly ignored? The company's success story was no longer just about numbers. It was about people. Outside the building, the story gained attention. Not because of scandal but because of meaning. A viral headline framed it simply. They mocked the poor cleaner until the truth came out. But those who were there knew the real lesson went deeper. It wasn't about humiliation or revenge. It was about empathy, accountability, and the hidden cost of underestimating others. The cleaner took on her new role with the same quiet focus she always had. She listened more than she spoke. She paid attention to details others missed. And when problems surfaced, they were addressed early, before silence could turn into damage. She didn't need a corner office to lead. Her influence came from trust. Months later, a new CEO addressed the company. In that speech, the cleaner's name wasn't mentioned. It didn't need to be. The values she had protected were now written into the culture itself. Respect wasn't optional anymore. It was expected. For those who had once laughed or looked away, the memory lingered. Not as shame but as a turning point. They had learned that power can sit quietly in the corner, holding a mop, listening closely. They had learned that how you treat people when you think they don't matter says everything about who you are. And for the audience watching this story unfold, the takeaway was clear. Never judge a person by their job title. Never assume someone's worth by the uniform they wear. Because sometimes, the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone else ignored. The building still stood tall, a symbol of success. But the real success was something less visible and far more lasting. A culture changed, a lesson learned, and a reminder that respect costs nothing, but ignoring it can cost everything. And that was how the story ended. Not with applause or headlines, but with a simple truth left behind in the quiet halls. When you treat people with dignity, you never have to fear who they really are.